My name is Kat Oriel with Forbes Breaking News. Today we have Charles Booker, the youngest Black state lawmaker to serve in the Kentucky House of Representatives. Charles, thank you for joining me today. We are about 8 weeks away now from the midterm elections. You had a historic primary win, being the first Black Kentuckian to win the state's Democratic nomination. And now you are facing Senator Rand Paul, who is vying for a third term. What made you decide to run against him? And why do you believe you're the best candidate for this position?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. I decided to run for United States Senate really out of necessity. This is about survival for me, my family, my community, but people all over Kentucky that are living in the struggle. I come from one of the poorest zip codes in the state, and I'm tired of poverty, and I know we deserve better. We deserve more than politicians who profit from our pain, who exploit and ignore us. And Rand Paul has been at the center of that, mocking us every step of the way. So beating him is really about us winning our future. And that is exactly what we're going to do. And I'm proud of the history we've already made, the barriers we're already breaking, but there's more work to do. And this campaign, we're inspiring more regular people to lift up their voice from the hood to the holler, and we're going to win this race.
So you ran against Amy McGrath in 2020, who won the primary, but lost in the general, despite a lot of attention and national support. Did her loss ever discourage you from believing Kentucky can turn blue, since the state has not elected a Democrat in over 3 decades?
Not at all. People on the ground in Kentucky understood very clearly what was at stake in 2020, just as we do now. And painfully, none of us were really surprised by the outcome in November of that cycle. A lot of people in Kentucky are frustrated with the status quo. We've been ignored and abandoned in our politics for a long time. And the big money machine that creates a lot of ads but doesn't really build infrastructure was not a winning model in Kentucky and in a lot of races. And you're only going to win in places like Kentucky by doing the work, which is what we're doing. We're organizing and building infrastructure and actually expanding the electorate. So we're getting more people to get involved and register and organize in their neighborhoods. So we're going to boost turnout in areas that Democrats have written off and Republicans have taken for granted. So when I say we're going to blow Rand Paul out, I mean it.
Would you compare your race to any other races, whether it be national or local, in this election season?
You know, I realize what we're doing here is really unique, but I'm also really encouraged to see a lot of candidates running across the country from backgrounds that aren't really conventional in the sense of what you would expect to see in the United States Senate. You know, the Senate as a chamber is really disconnected in a lot of ways. The average age is certainly a lot older than me. And to come from a background that was filled with adversity, food stamps, free lunch, times when mom and I were homeless, a lot of these challenges, to be the nominee, Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate, but to also see other races across the country. Mandela Barnes running for U.S. Senate, Gary Chambers running as well, several others that are standing up from a background that may have once been determined to count someone out. We're now proving the doubt is wrong, and it's exciting. But what we're doing here is really special because Kentucky is a state that is quickly written off. It is a state that is defined by Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul, two of the worst politicians in the country. And it's one of the poorest, most disenfranchised states. So by winning here, we're really helping to protect our pursuit of democracy as a country. And we will get it done.
Speaking of the high average age of many politicians in Congress right now, the majority leader, who's from your state of Kentucky, is 80 years old. Many Americans do support age limits and term limits for members of Congress. Is this something you support as well?
Well, what I'll say, first of all, is I am only who I am because I learned early on to listen to and look to my elders. So I have great appreciation for those who have done the work, those who know what it takes and can help shine a light and provide that wisdom and guidance and leadership. But I also do believe for myself in term limits. I do not want to pursue this out of building a career. I really do want things to change. And so going into the Senate, I am committing to not serving any more than 2 terms. And I also have led by that here in Kentucky in the state legislature. So people know that I'm really doing this for them and I'm still connected to the challenges that they're facing, which is why we're building so much support.
A large part of your platform is a Kentucky New Deal. What does a Kentucky New Deal entail, and why is it necessary for your state?
So my vision of a Kentucky New Deal is really the idea that life, freedom, and prosperity is something that everyone should have. And it is understanding that, going through history, the idea, the promise of a New Deal to make sure that no one falls through the cracks, to do the work of ending poverty, to build sustainable economies. In a lot of ways, that promise has been undermined by politicians like Rand Paul, who profit from big money interests. And so what I'm saying is, instead of us allowing a national narrative to define our future, let's take it back for ourselves. As Kentuckians, let's do this for us. Let's build our own New Deal, which includes investing in infrastructure and leveraging the very policies that Rand Paul has opposed to invest in infrastructure, including the Inflation Reduction Act, and to put money on the ground into communities that have been ignored. Make sure that our internet isn't crap, that our water is clean, and that we have sustainable jobs with local businesses that are thriving. And it's also about making sure that everyone has quality health care and all the tools and supports that they need to have wealth and prosperity.
Speaking of healthcare, Kentucky is still at a very high COVID rate, yet Senator Paul continues to clash with top officials about origins, masking, vaccines. If elected, how would you help Kentucky continue on through the pandemic, especially as COVID becomes endemic?
Well, one of the things that has really hurt me the most as a Kentuckian, and all my family is from Kentucky, my family goes back several generations here. I've lost loved ones due to COVID. I've seen the effects firsthand. My legislative office, while I was in the House, became essentially an unemployment office because we were dealing with record levels of unemployment across this Commonwealth as folks were losing everything. And to see Rand Paul stoking a lot of fear, sitting on a perch and essentially using his background in medicine to mislead and encourage folks to put down health standards and essentially say, burn your mask, don't worry about getting vaccinated, don't take care of yourselves. And then he's profiting on the back end because his family is getting stock in remdesivir to try to get money in their pocket when we're getting sick and dying. It really is gross and it's a shame. So what I'm going to do in the United States Senate, first of all, is stand up for Kentuckians. I know that healthcare is a right. And I know that if we put policies in place like Medicare for All, we're going to be better positioned when pandemics come or when crises hit. It's also going to help make sure local businesses are ready when the hard times come. And then also, I'm going to do the work of investing in infrastructure so that we are prepared, not only for when those hard times come, but that we are better prepared to build sustainable economies across Kentucky. We need that now, and we're going to get it in November by winning the Senate race.
Now, going back to the Inflation Reduction Act, do you think it will actually bring down inflation?
I think what I know is that the Inflation Reduction Act is really another historic step in the right direction. President Biden's administration, although there's a lot of work that needs to be done, have taken some really strong steps to invest in communities that have been ignored for a long time. And we have to understand that the inflation that we're seeing here in our country is also a part of challenges across the globe because we were dealing with a global pandemic. But it also helped to expose a lot of the corporate greed and the price gouging that continue to help drive up costs. So putting more resources in the hands of working families, helping folks get more money in their pocket, make sure that they are able to afford to survive. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I have fought in a bipartisan way to make sure that people can afford and have greater access to their medicine. And so being able to cap copays, something that Rand Paul opposes, is going to help a lot of people keep money in their pocket. These are important steps towards driving down the cost of affording to survive. But there is much more work to be done, and expanding the Senate, getting rid of the filibuster, and certainly getting rid of Rand Paul is going to be critical in us doing it.
Are there any provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act that you don't agree with?
Well, one of the things that I want to see happen more is deeper investments in what a sustainable future looks like. And so I see it as an opportunity. Kentucky has been a ground zero in a lot of ways for the decline in the fossil fuel industry and building not only access to sustainable energy such as solar, but also supporting small business growth so more regular people can have economic access as well, is really critical. We have a lot of mitigation that needs to happen from abandoned mines here in Kentucky and a lot of contaminated waters. And so we need more investment in like climate cores to do that work of remediation and repairing our land. So I do see that there were steps made, and certainly the investment in addressing climate chaos is a big deal, but we got a lot more work to do.
And do you believe that the country is currently in a recession?
You know what? Where I'm from the hood, from the west end of Louisville, we have felt the weight of not just a recession, but in many ways, depression for a long time. So as a Commonwealth, being one of the poorest states in the country, we answer that with a little bit more of a perspective on how the struggle has really hit communities for a long time. In the neighborhood that I've grown up in, unemployment had been around 30% for years before the pandemic, which is why leadership in Kentucky is so critical, because now that we are dealing with, you know, the challenges in building our economy back up and getting back on our feet, which we are seeing the tide turn, and it is encouraging. We're seeing jobs being created just right here in Kentucky. Ford plant agreeing to expand, creating batteries, electric batteries here, creating jobs for the future. We see the opportunities coming, but we felt the pain for a long time. And me fighting to make sure that we're actually investing in the communities that get marginalized and ignored the most is a big part of what I believe we need in the U.S. Senate.
Now, moving on to current accomplishments within the larger Democratic Party and going back to what we've been talking about with investments in communities and economic development, do you think that President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness plan will help with that?
I tell my story all the time. My wife and I, after graduating from college, I'm first in my family to do so and to go to law school. We have over 6 figures in student debt, and we've pretty much concluded we will probably never pay them off. We are renters now because our debt to income ratio has prevented us from being able to get financed because of these student loans. And I know that's true for a lot of working families. And he made a promise, President Biden made a promise to move forward in canceling some student debt. And the step that's been made, although I believe we should cancel all of it and that college should be free, the step that President Biden has made is an important one, and it will help a lot of people.
So are you saying that you still have loans to pay off and that you qualify under President Biden's new forgiveness plan?
We absolutely have student loans that we will still be struggling to pay off. And when I go to the United States Senate, we will still be paying them. My wife and I are encouraged to see that we will qualify for some relief as well. So we can personally acknowledge that this is a meaningful investment for regular families with children. We have 3 girls, and each child is a mortgage, and it makes it hard to be able to afford these loans. And so it is encouraging, but there is clearly more work that we have to do.
What would your message be to borrowers who may have taken out loans but already paid them off or don't qualify for this reimbursement plan?
My message to those who have had loans in the past and paid them off is that we deserve a country where their investments are accounted for. We are seeing so many communities that are struggling, small businesses that are suffering, people that are not able to pursue their dreams, their children struggling to pursue their dreams and their careers, because we know the way the student debt is set up is very predatory. And if you come from a community that is weighed down by poverty, like I am, you're often written off and not given a chance. Mitch McConnell doesn't believe that if you come from a community like me, that you should be able to have a professional career. He doesn't think people from poverty should be able to be doctors and be attorneys. Because, well, if you get student debt and you try to pursue your career, that's your problem, that you're getting this impossible situation that your family couldn't get out of. And so I understand these challenges because I've lived them. And I know that if we can help communities and families live a better life, it's going to help all of us, because we're all connected and we all have a vested interest. I don't want someone else to go through the struggles I've gone through just because I've experienced them. My job is to help make things better for the future, and we all have a part to play in that.
What was your response to Republicans who were calling out Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, but had PPP loans forgiven themselves?
Well, they're hypocrites, and everybody knows it. That's not a partisan statement. Most people are really frustrated with politicians. They feel like politicians are corrupt and don't care about us and just care about their personal interests. And Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul are proving it yet again here. If it's tax breaks to their wealthy friends, they're perfectly fine. If it's forgiving PPP loans that actually didn't go to the businesses on the ground that needed them, forgiving those, fine. As soon as we want to help regular people, there's an excuse and there's demonization. And it's because they're profiting from us staying in the positions that we're in. By lifting this message up across Kentucky, talking to folks that have been Republicans, that have been independent or haven't registered at all, saying, look, they're screwing us. They want us to stay in this position that we're in. Kentucky's not struggling because we're morally deficient or because we're lazy. We have politicians who have chosen to abandon us and sell us out, and we got to get them out of office.
So in recent weeks, the White House has taken a more direct approach in calling out Republicans. In some speeches recently, Biden has called MAGA Republicans out by name. In your campaign as well, you have not shied away from calling out Republicans, such as Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell. You said very directly that they are holding Kentucky back. And then in a viral ad that you released, you were wearing a noose around your neck and discussed the legacy of pain endured by many Black Americans today. So what do you think about this direct approach that Democrats are taking in calling out MAGA Republicans and the state of the Republican Party today? And what is your take on the state of race relations in Kentucky and America more broadly?
Well, in terms of calling out, my approach is always to lift up common bonds and find ways to build together, to call in, if you will, but it also requires you to stand in integrity and speak the truth. And so this to me is not about calling out MAGA Republicans. It's about speaking the facts and saying exactly what's at stake. Folks like Rand Paul were stoking the big lie to undermine democracy. That's what they were doing. They are pushing divisions and weaponizing racism and hate for political power. That's what they're doing. And so calling that out is really about saying we can do better, all of us. We have a vested interest as family, regardless of party, to turn course and to stand together and fight for a brighter future, because we're all going to fall off the cliff if we allow this to continue happening. And I see the height of racial tension in a lot of ways. We dealt with the pain spilling out in the streets here in Kentucky after Breonna Taylor was murdered, and we're just now getting a semblance of accountability as officers have been arrested at the federal level and are admitting that they lied in creating the warrant and creating a scenario where they would go to Breonna Taylor's apartment when they knew they had no reason to go there. So we know there is a lot of work to be done, and we will not be able to fix what we don't face. Rand Paul does not believe that racism exists, but meanwhile, he's best friends with Jim Crow. He wants to make it hard for people to be heard at the ballot box. He doesn't believe in accountability for inequity that is permeated through generations. He thinks that if you are discriminated against or if you're blocked out, that's your problem. Too bad for you. And we cannot afford leaders that don't care about us. So running this campaign focused on love and unity and humanity and our human rights, our agency, is really helping us to build the type of coalition that will transform our country. Because I know Kentucky is a state that's nearly 90% white. And a lot of people will look at me and say, well, Charles, you're a Black man from the hood. How are you going to win in Kentucky? I'm speaking to the issues that people are actually dealing with, and I'm organizing in places that we've taken for granted or given up on. And I do believe that is where not just the Republican Party, but really party politics in general, certainly in Kentucky, has missed the mark in looking past and not speaking to the challenges that people are facing. and lifting up a message that is about delivering real results for regular people. Now, to be clear, Donald Trump spoke to that. He called out that the system is broken, that people are being left behind, but he was exploiting it. He never intended to actually do anything about it. And when I speak to those same challenges, it's not because I'm some wealthy politician from New York with gold toilets. It's because I've lived the struggle. And so people realize that I'm talking what I know about, and they understand that I'm fighting for them because I'm locked arms with them on the front lines. And so that is why this race is so important. And that's why we're going to win it.
So going back to what you're saying about finding common ground, is there anything that you like about your opponent, Senator Rand Paul? Do you think that there's anything you both could agree on?
My biggest problem with Rand Paul is that he's an imposter. Even in the moments where there might be some agreement, let him talk for 2 minutes more, you will realize, oh, he was just BS. Rand Paul has often said that government should not be in the business of oppressing people. He believes in a small government. That's what he said, all the way up until it came down to protecting a person who becomes pregnant, making sure that the government is not determining what people should do with their bodies. Now he wants to ban all abortion, even in cases of rape and incest, disregarding the life of someone who is going through one of the hardest things that you could ever experience that I can't fathom as a man. And so I find it hard to really claim any agreement with him because he's always lying. He stated that he once supported legalization. I support legalizing cannabis. Rand Paul has introduced 0 bills that have become law during his 2 terms in office because he is a pointless and unserious politician. And, he even said he was only going to serve 2 terms, and he lied about that too. He's running again. And so we can't really deal with someone who plays window dressing. He says he has acted like he wanted to end endless conflict. He just wants to be a contrarian. I've had family serve in every branch of the military, and I sincerely do believe we need to end endless conflict. We need to address the prison industrial complex and the military industrial complex. We're not going to get that from Rand Paul. We're going to get cartoon characterizations and crisis acting. So he has to go.
Turning to the Dobbs decision and the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, how does this help or hurt your candidacy and the Democrats' chances of maintaining their majority?
The Dobbs decision really helps to highlight the urgency of this race. I believe in a lot of ways, and I say this from serving in the state legislature, that the politicians who have been really weaponizing the wedge issue around abortion, they were doing it for power and never really expected to be accountable to what they were fighting. They never thought they'd actually have to make the decision to take away the rights of women, people who become pregnant, because they knew that sane people who believe in humanity, would raise the standard. Well, now that they've gotten their way, and Mitch McConnell has stacked the Supreme Court, and now they've taken away this one of the more central rights for privacy and humanity, people are waking up and realizing that, wait a minute, what are you all trying to do? You're actually trying to take away our humanity. You're actually trying to take away our voice. I've dealt with and worked with folks who are lifelong Republicans or not registered at all, that have shared painful stories about their experiences going through pregnancy, sharing stories that family of theirs were raped, children who were raped, who nearly lost their lives, and the trauma that they experienced. And so now people are talking about this not from a partisan lens, but from a very personal one. And because of that, you're seeing races across the country that are raising the standard and fighting to protect this critical right. We saw what happened in Kansas. We're seeing it happen in Kentucky too. And it will help not only candidates that are on the right side of history, but it's going to help us secure our future. And I'm proud to stand up for the rights of women and those who become pregnant. I'm proud to stand up for the rights of Kentuckians, and we're going to win this race.
Would this be one of your top policy goals if elected as senator?
It is definitely one of my most immediate focuses now, realizing what is before us, and the Supreme Court has made it clear where they're going next, interracial marriage, the ability to have family planning. We know what's before us, so we must immediately do the work of codifying these critical rights, right to privacy, marriage equality, and all these different rights and opportunities that have been taken for granted for far too long. So that is a first order of action. We need to get rid of the filibuster. We need to protect those rights and get on to doing the bigger work of ending poverty and protecting democracy in our country.
And would you support expanding the Supreme Court?
Absolutely. I believe we need to unpack the Supreme Court by expanding it. Mitch McConnell has already packed it, and we're seeing the results of that now. So I absolutely believe we need to expand it to unpack and undo the damage that the Grim Reaper has done, and I'll be a proud folk to make that happen.
To conclude, I would like to talk about the flooding that recently happened in your home state of Kentucky, especially grappling with the realities of climate change. What do you believe you could do to help the state recover from the effects of the flooding and help prevent further damage in the future?
I want to express how thankful I am for all the support across the country that has come in to support families here in Kentucky that have lost everything, not just with the flood, but as you'll remember, the end of the last year, there was a tornado that ripped across nearly a quarter of the state, and folks lost everything. And I do believe, and we're seeing it now, that a lot of communities that were already struggling, these are areas where poverty was already generational. Jobs had left, cold jobs had left, folks had been abandoned, and infrastructure was crumbling. Water systems were not up to par. A lot of folks were already drinking water that was brown or orange even. And what we saw with these storms is our land has been degraded for so long, our infrastructure has been abandoned for so long, that we have been more and more susceptible. And then of course, climate chaos with the fossil fuel industry and the warming of our planet that's making these storms more likely. So being in the United States Senate and having the chance to push at a systemic level to invest in infrastructure, to do the work of mitigating the harm to our land so that folks are drinking clean water, breathing clean air, and also creating good jobs in the process of that is an opportunity that we can't miss. And, I have noticed most of all in the midst of this flooding, Rand Paul he's turned his back on us. Throughout his career, he has voted against disaster relief. He doesn't believe it's the job of the government that we pay for to show up for us when crises hit. And he even criticized those of us who've been on the ground helping, saying that it was just for photo ops because he doesn't want to get his nails dirty. Well, people of Kentucky know who's standing up for them. They see us working for them. And that's why we're building support even now. So I am proud to represent those who have suffered through the hardest of times. I want them to know I love them. And when we get to the US Senate, we're going to fight hard for them.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for making the time to sit down with me today.